Well, welcome everybody. It's great to see you. I mean, people are just dropping in their well wishes and where they're from. It'd be great if if you just share where you're coming from. I see India, I see Dubai, Netherlands. Oh, this is fantastic. I'm sitting in Chicago in the middle of the night, but having a wonderful time. This is a really great experience. And
Seoul,
Seoul as well, Philippines.
Peru.
Wonderful,
I mean,
wonderful.
we might as well get a world map out and just, this is fantastic.
Well, Steve and I are really just very, very happy to be here with everybody. I'll give a little bit of my background and then Steve can share his. I am a high school social studies teacher from the Chicagoland area in Des Plaines, just north of the city of Chicago. And I've been teaching social studies. This is, if I count my student teaching, this is year number 30. So I do advanced placement government. I do regular government. I've taught U.S. history, American studies, and I also teach a philosophy elective, which I've been doing for a dozen years in my district. Primarily, I teach juniors and seniors, although I have had sophomores, but not freshmen. I do teach freshmen in what's called an advisory in our school that helps freshmen acclimate to high school. So that's my background, and then I work obviously with my brother Steve on Teach Different that we've been doing a few years now as a kind of a side thing, but it really captures our love for education through conversation. So with that, Steve.
Sure, yeah, it's become definitely more than a side thing to teach different, right? We're really excited to share the conversation method with you. Hopefully, we'll get Kimberly in here because she's going to have the inquiry component that goes really nicely with the method for conversations we have. But really quick about me, I'm social studies as well in mainly high school aged, also middle school. And I've had an urban education experience, mostly in the city of Chicago. So I've gotten the chance to work with, really challenging student populations. And I've also taught mathematics. So I kind of pride myself on being somewhat of a well-rounded educator. But I'm hoping that this method that you're going to learn tonight, I'm hoping you'll appreciate that it comes from someone from the humanities side and the math side of teaching. That's at least what I'm hoping, because it's a system, right? So I'm just excited. I'm excited to be here and, excited to get going with this.
All right. Well, with that, we will just start in here, and then when Kimberly joins, she does, and I'm going to share my screen. And for this, people aren't able to speak. Is that correct?
Yeah, they can just put things into the chat.
Okay, good. That's what we were thinking. And it looks like we have like about 45 people. Did I read that right? So, that's awesome. So if hopefully everybody's fingers are ready for this conversation and you can weigh in and just share ideas as they come out. So I'll share my screen and we will begin here. All right, powerful inquiry routine. So the theme here, of course, is inquiry and how they relate to conversation. So we just did introductions and background. Steve and I are going to walk everybody through the method, and we're going to actually have a conversation over Zoom. But we need everybody to visualize doing this in a live classroom with students. And then we'll talk a little bit about implementation, how to bring it into the classroom, and then some ideas for how you might want to connect these conversations to curriculum. And then we're going to show you how you can get stuff to take with you after this is over. So we definitely want to give away some nice things. All right, power of conversations. I can't say enough about the importance of these. You know, for classroom management, I don't know if these words are familiar to you in your education setting. There's a lot of buzzwords in education, as we know: social emotional learning, culturally responsive teaching, critical thinking, restorative practices of a lot of times, if any of your schools use circles of any type to do discussions, this is a great method you'll learn that you can implement into that. And perspective taking. The way Steve and I think of it is that if you get conversations right, you get most everything in education right. If there's one thing you can do well that captures all of the skills and things that we want kids to have, it's conversations. So it's that silver bullet, so to speak. All right. Well, here we go. We're just going to jump in and show you how this works. The method that Stephen and I have developed starts with, okay, a conversation starts with a quote. And a quote that is short and provocative. It gets you thinking about some very deep theme about life. So the one we're going to do today is by a civil rights activist named Audre Lorde. She was popular in the 1960s and 70s in the United States. And she was very active in civil rights alongside Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and others. And the quote we have for her, from her, is, "Your silence will not protect you." Right? And these quotes that start the conversation, they are meant to be purposely a little bit unclear, a little bit, wow, what is this person saying? It should inspire thinking and questioning. So this is the one we're gonna try now. Now, once you have posted a quote like this, the first step you're going to do, you're going to have your students do, but you're going to do tonight or this morning, is you're going to try to interpret the claim in your own words. So think about how you would write this quote in your own words, and then also think of a personal experience that you've had that shows the truth of the quote. So whatever you think it means, be thinking, okay, what in my life, what is Audre Lorde saying? Your silence will protect you. How could I put that in my own words? Your silence will not protect you. How can I put that in my own words? And then what personal experience have I had that shows the truth of that for me, right? You want to make this personal. So we're going to give everybody 5 minutes, and we want you to chat in your interpretation of the quote, and then maybe just drop in, if you can, a little bit of a personal experience, and we'll go from there. All right, so we'll give you 5 minutes. On your mark, get set, think.
I'm just looking at some of these, and I just want to acknowledge a few. They're all really good. ignoring a problem will not make it go away. Lance, great stuff. You know, it almost the same amount of words, basically, but so revealing. It's great. And Bridget, yeah, only speaking up will protect you. That's the other kind of inference you can make from it. And again, if you can throw in a personal experience, do so. They're always the most helpful. And you know, as we're doing this, and when you do this with students, boy, you want to get them to step up, you know, and if they're going to say something like, yeah, ignoring a problem will not make it go away, you want to really know from them, can you share a problem that you tried to ignore? You know, and then it ended up sneaking up on you earlier. And the kids are going to have a lot to say about that because they all have those experiences, right? This is where everyone is smart. Silence is not a solution to a problem. Silence is like hiding. Interesting, yeah. Dr. Patel, it means that a teacher, you need to communicate with your learners in an appropriate manner in order to deliver the right message. Being silent will not suffice the message to be conveyed. That's really good. Proactive communication is very, very helpful, right? At times. That's a good sign, yeah. Sanjivani. I don't know if I'm saying your name right. I'm going to read yours if that's okay. If you keep silently suffering the actions of a person who is unjust, then the problem will become bigger than what we can deal with. Advocate for yourself and advocate for others. All right. Now you brought in the word unjust. You saw that is one way to read that quote. We're talking a morality here, right? Really appreciate that. That's great. And advocating for others is important, right? If you see someone else doing a wrong, speaking up is important for others, not just yourself. These are great.
Yeah, Jillian Carter, silence may have been a way to protect the introvert. That's really good. We have a lot of introverts in our class. They're really, really quiet, and they feel like by speaking up that they're going to be embarrassed or so on. So but it doesn't protect them. We need their voices.
We've got a strategy for the shy students, Jillian. We're going to get to that later. Not voting, Lisa. If you don't vote, you shouldn't complain about the winner. Yeah, Laura, you'll find that it will make you think of other quotes. These are great.
Yes, Laura, a couple weeks ago, a student brought up the very same quote. They couldn't remember it during the conversation, but they brought up the same quote.
Shilpa, you nailed it. You nailed it. You know, it's this idea that you're worried about what others are going to think about you. That's why we don't speak up. You're suppressing yourself, you know, and that's something to keep in mind, right? And to not shell yourself up and make sure that you're expressing yourself when you can. That's an important theme to talk about. with the kids, and they're just developing, they're all at such different stages in their own expression, and this will bring that out. It'll create more self-reflection.
And we should also say now, Steve and I are from the middle school and high school environment, but this could be done in an elementary classroom. You might, depending on the quote that you use, you might have to help explain some of the language of the quote, but elementary school students can do what we are doing right now.
Yeah, fifth graders, Laura. Yep. Dan, I think we're ready. Yeah, we're ready to.
Well, really great. These are excellent thoughts. You guys really put this in your own words, and you made it your truth, right? You made this something that you believe in, and you shared personal experiences to back it up. So here's where the conversation, the kids start believing in Audre Lorde, that what she's saying makes sense and is persuasive. Now, here is where we really get them to critically think. Because what we're going to do now is take the very same quote, and if you see, the slide just changed a little bit. Now we're going to look at the counterclaim to the quote. Now you're going to ask your students, it's time to disagree with Audre Lorde and to articulate a counterclaim that is equally true to what she's saying. The idea is don't just disagree with her just to say you disagree with her and you're done with this assignment. Really believe in something that has equal value. Okay, Steve, is that anything to add there?
It's once you do this a few times, you'll know the drill. It'll come so naturally. Right now, just literally think of disagreeing with this quote, regardless of whether or not you agree with it. And you're coming from a different perspective. Convince yourself of it.
So we're going to do the very same thing. Take, 5 minutes. Start chatting in your counterclaims.
Christy, interesting. Arguing with people who've already made up their mind, if they're not willing to listen, your silence actually may protect you because you save your energy and you're barking up the wrong tree. So actually remaining silent if someone's not listening may be the right thing to do. Keep quiet or there will be trouble, Bridget. If anyone can just share any experiences that match these, they're starting to come out. This is great. Mind your own business, Angela. Keep your side of the street clean. You got it. At times, it's better to be quiet. Anybody ever heard the phrase, silence is golden? Silence is louder than words. Silence may ensure peace in disagreement. This is great. Joanna, I don't know if we said that at the same time. Silence is golden. It's great. And Viliana, I bet you. Viliana, when your enemy is stronger, maybe being quiet is exactly what you should be doing. Just to protect yourself. Right? Lakeisha, we just did this quote in a podcast. You can't wake a person who's pretending to be asleep. And that's related to the other comment about people not listening and how when you keep talking, it's not something that is useful after a while.
I like Parul's silence brings peace, harmony, and spiritual strength inside.
Goodness.
That's beautiful.
Bridget, where's that quote from? Better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. Is that Einstein? I don't know. I don't know why I'm guessing Einstein, but that's a good one.
Sometimes people just need someone to listen. It's great. Often when I use this one in class, I'll have a student, usually a quiet student, say, being silent, I'm not embarrassed if I'm silent. I can just think to myself and not have to put myself out there and risk anything.
Lance, that's funny about the meetings. If you remain silent at a meeting, maybe they'll let everybody go. I can't remember who said this, but when you're silent, you're able to be more reflective. Yeah, comfort zone, Shilpa. Yeah, I kind of think of it sometimes as like a team dynamic, right? If everybody is trying to talk in the team at once, no one is sitting back and viewing what's happening and being reflective and being more strategic and noticing similarities of what people are saying. So one example of when you might use this conversation is maybe to introduce group work, getting the kids in the right mindset to do work in groups. It's great. So Dan, these are all great. I mean,
It's excellent.
we made that turn, okay? And the more conversations you do with this method, the more, guess who's going to start making the turn without you asking? The students. They're going to go right into the counterclaim. The conversation's going to heat up the minute you put the quote up. They're going to be thinking opposite things. So the key is, though, that's the tension.
The tension. I was just going to say
Productive.
that the conversation reaches the tension with the counterclaim, because then you have, in that atmosphere in your classroom, you have two things, two ways of looking at the world, two multiple perspectives that are both valid, but they're competing against one another. And right there, as I described that, that is going to be that soil where your kids have to start figuring out how to think for themselves, because they've heard valid thoughts from so many people and they've disagreed with themselves. And now they're ready to take positions.
And Dan, I'm going to add one thing to that. The more you can get your students to be sharing their own experiences in defense of the claim, against the claim, in defense of the counterclaim, against the counterclaim, the more you're nailing it. Like, this is what will be so powerful for your classroom when they're the ones sharing. They're taking what they know, which is their experiences, and they're applying it to these big concepts. And it's just wonderful to see it. So I think that's good,
Okay.
Dan. We're ready.
Okay. All right.
Those were great.
Great job. Great
Thank
job
you,
with with the claim and counterclaim. All right. So here's a little visual to show you where we are here. We started with a quote, the claim. We then moved to a counterclaim and disagreed with the original statement. So there's the critical thinking tension. And now we're going to move to the last part of it, which is the inquiry component of it, which is the question, where what will happen with these conversations is that students, and by the way, they don't do this at the end. I mean, we act like it's at the end of the conversation, but get your notepad out, because what's going to happen is kids are going to start asking questions organically in the middle of the conversation about what they're talking about. And you want to make sure that you get those down. So that's what we're going to do. We just had a mini conversation here. So why doesn't everybody in the chat may ask a question that you have from this conversation that you want answered? That has arisen as a result of this experience.
And another way to think about this question is to, think about a question you could ask that would allow someone who believed in the claim and the counterclaim, two different people, it would allow them room to make an argument towards something. Kishan, and I'm not exactly know how to pronounce your name. I'm going to read yours. Where should we draw a boundary when to speak and when to remain silent?
That's great.
That will get a question like that. Will get the students to think about criteria of when something's appropriate and when it isn't. That's it. That's really good. Yeah, and Mandy, it can be as simple. It can be straightforward too. When do you keep silent? When should you speak up? Under what circumstances? Great.
Right, Bridget, under what circumstances? What I like about that, Bridget, is that what the kids, that question forces people to set their own criteria on when it's acceptable and when it isn't, which is even a higher level of thinking.
Yeah, to what extent is silence golden? Parole, okay, yeah. What's more important to stand for? Is that argument worthy enough to break your inner silence? It's like you're thinking in your mind, do I want to pick this battle and speak up, or is this one I want to sit back on? Is it worthy enough for me? What a wonderful self-reflective question. And Christy, yeah, is there a point when protecting yourself can't be the focus? Thinking about that one, think about people who put themselves in harm's way for their loved ones, right? There's a time when protecting yourself can't be the focus, I would think, but yes. How do you use silence creatively to address an issue? Great.
Oh, Donna, that's good. Depending on how you use this conversation, how do we make sure everyone gets a chance to speak and listen? That's really good. That makes me think that this would be a really good conversation to have at the beginning of the school year, to help your kids see the value of, or be thinking about when should they be quiet and when should they speak up. It's a great way to use this conversation.
Jillian, I know where you're coming from. These faculty meetings could really benefit from some of these quotes. Sir, just to have a positive, get to know people a little bit.
We have principals who use this method with their teachers as a way to get their teachers thinking critically, so that it'll transfer to the classroom.
Ooh, would Alexei, what a question. See, Bridget's already doing curriculum connections. would Alexei Navalny, I'm going to assume you mean agree with Audre Lorde, Bridget. I don't know if you left. Oh, wait, agree is right there. There was just no space. Yes, yes. What a great question. Would they agree? These are great.
Oh yeah, make sure we're posting to everyone. Maybe some of you might be just chatting privately.
Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, most of them are to everyone, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's easy to forget. I guess Lisa, make sure it says everyone. Parul, most everybody else, and then Donna, make sure it's to everyone. Whatever. I mean, it's fine. We're trying to share them out loud anyway, so it doesn't, in a way, it doesn't matter. Silence, nourishment to wisdom, and sometimes words means your freedom and rights.
Okay. Well, these are great. I mean,
Great.
I with 50 people, my gosh, this is
Really
there's
good.
so many different ideas. You guys are getting this very quickly. So the one that Steve and I we usually, with all these little conversations, we come up with one ourselves. As the teacher, I like to have one in my back pocket because if the kids aren't thinking that day and I really want them to use this conversation, I bring one out. So, how do we know when to be silent? Which is very similar to what a lot of you wrote there. And, we call it an essential question, right? It doesn't have a clear answer. It's ambiguous. It requires multiple perspectives. It requires you to take a stand. And what you're doing here, in addition to motivating inquiry, is that you're setting up a situation where kids are taking a position and then using evidence to defend something. So, if you teach social studies or English or whatever, and you have the kids write papers, this is practice for them in taking a stand and supporting what they're saying. Yeah, Laura, I agree. This is exactly what MYP would be connected with. You're on mute, Steve.
It's always embarrassing when you're trying to talk and you're on mute. But in taking a stand, one thing I just wanted to point out, the kids are going to all be at different levels as to what it means to cite a source for their opinion. You may even be trying to teach them
It's
how
funny,
to do
Bridget.
and okay, Bridget, that's so funny. The mute button will not protect you. That is very funny. Now you made me lose my thought. No, but here I got it back. Because the kids have experiences and stories to share on these big ideas, they can use the text of their own lives to defend their opinions. That's okay with these big ideas. And it's a good way to start the process of thinking of, what it means to cite a source. I'm going to cite my peer that I heard their idea in a conversation. So it's kind of a way to get them used to that.
Okay, great. Well, let's just move forward here. So here's a summary of what this method is, right? Think of this as a protocol. It's a routine that for conversations that uses quotes, claims, counterclaims, and essential questions. You're creating a compassionate classroom where everyone is motivated to think and ask questions. So you're getting the intellectual and the emotional together if we do this right and the kids are in the right mood to do this. Now, Steve, the trick. You're on mute still. It will not protect you.
Yeah, why don't you click on it because I'm not sharing.
Okay. So we call it the trick. You don't have to always use it this way, but we've found that this is a great way to set up a conversation. And that is send the students the conversation the day before in a Google form. Get them to engage in this before our conversation. Think deeply about this quotation about responsibility from civil rights activist Audre Lorde. Okay, you have the picture. We like to put a video in, but you don't have to. A lot of times it's just the picture. And then they fill this out. Now, I don't know out there if people are familiar with what Google Forms are. This is just one of the Google suite of services and products. But what's nice here is that I do this 10 minutes before the end of a class period, when the next day I have the conversation. So I say, all right, we're going to take 10 to 15. You're going to fill this out. What does the claim mean? What does the counterclaim mean? Be thinking of your personal stories. See, as you saw from this conversation, it was maybe harder to think of your own personal stories right on the spot, so to speak. This way, you give the kids a chance to really think and document their experiences and submit them to you. And I give them a shot at the essential question. Sometimes I don't put that on the form. It just depends on the class. But I like this, like, what is one question you want answered in this conversation? And see what kind of question they can come up with before you even have the conversation. And then you'll have a bank of those. And then we call this an SEL check-in, where you want to get maybe the temperature of what the students are thinking. Yes, I'll be ready to speak and share my ideas, or call on me, share my ideas anonymously. Get a sense from them how they want to participate. Because depending on what conversation you use, some of these are pretty personal and pretty sensitive. And so you'll want to know those kids who really don't want to be called on and would rather not participate for whatever reason. But you know what? If we're doing this right, they all want to be called on.
Let me add something real quick. SEL stands for social emotional learning. Another education phrase that you may be familiar with it, not so much, but it really refers to kind of the non-academic side to learning. How do you prepare a student to learn, and what kinds of things need to be in place. And if you want to go back to the SEL, Dan, really quick. Earlier we were talking about shy students, okay? Students that don't want to speak up, don't want to talk. What is their role in a conversation? And when you get them to have agency and to choose beforehand how they want to participate, what you're really hoping is, everyone is going to at least say, you can share my ideas anonymously. So that when you get your spreadsheet with all these responses in them, you're going to have ideas from maybe some of your shyest students that you can share publicly in the conversation, but you don't have to call their name. You can allow them to decide whether or not they want credit for it. So just another way to get at engagement.
Dan, you're on mute now.
Got it. My fault.
Your silence will not protect you. Back at you.
What the Google form gives you is the ability to take in all of the ideas that the kids have shared. And this is your homework as a teacher then. You review the spreadsheet, And then you start strategizing. Who should I call on? Who should I not call on? Who has a personal experience that I want to make sure I ask that student to share? Because I think that that personal experience is probably shared by other students, and that would bring in more people into the conversation. And we just like to highlight different comments that the students make, and then we take those comments and make sure to bring them in to the discussion. So we mentioned here the intimidated student. This allows you to bring in a student who might be intimidated. You can find some cool idea that they wrote on the form the night before and mention it in the conversation, and hopefully that will bring them out and give them a little confidence. Because a lot of times, we know that the students are thinking of interesting things, but we've never really gotten those thoughts out of them to validate for them. This way, you have their thoughts. And then the shy student, same thing. This has been a theme that has come up tonight. This is a way to engage shyer students into this. And then the bored student, okay? I mean, some of our students just aren't interested in this. So what I like to do with them is, a lot of times they have the most interesting personal experiences because they just want to talk about themselves. They don't really want to stay on point. So I'll bring in something that they've said. And that way they feel like they're part of it as well. The spreadsheet is your chance to make sure that everybody's voice is heard, or as many people as possible. All right, now with a little bit with assessment, you got the essential question. If you develop an essential question yourself, you can use this as a good assessment. You noticed on the Google form that I asked the essential question. They won't have much to say about it because we haven't had the conversation yet. But then after the conversation is over, you could give them the very same essential question and watch them take a position and defend it with reasoning. And you will be able to see clear movement in their thinking at 2 points in time. So that's one, I think, a really good way to use that inquiry component of this and actually get data showing that they're thinking about the world in a more complex way. Okay, that is the method right there. Claim, counterclaim, essential question. So what we thought we'd do now, how are we on time here? Good, about 15 minutes about? Okay. What we thought we'd do now is talk a little bit about implementation. We'll do this really quickly. And, we've been thinking about this in a classroom setting. You can use this in a small group setting. I use it sometimes with one-on-one students who I want to engage in a meaningful way. They might be by more accelerated students that need more of a challenge. So it's very flexible there. And then Steve mentioned SEL. It can be used with counselors. It can be used with deans at a school. It can be used in your own classroom to help the kids with some sort of social emotional skill. That's one way to do it. It can also be used for hooks for academic content. And you guys already dropped in some of those ideas in the chat during the conversation. So you're already thinking along those lines. Implementation, I love it to introduce a unit. It's a great way to set the tone for a unit. You could start a year this way, start a lesson. Steve's used it for classroom management before. Advisory, SEL.
Yeah, let me share that in 30 seconds.
Yeah.
We gave you the Google form kind of trick, the way to have the conversation before you really have the conversation. That really works well. But don't when you're trying this out, don't feel as if you need any technology. All you need is a place to write a quote and to have a claim, counterclaim, essential question kind of worked out in your head beforehand. I used to pass out slips of paper and just have the students write down what they think the claim is. Collect the slips of paper, have a student read them out loud. And so don't get intimidated by the technology aspect of it. The Google form is just a really, really nice tool to use.
And then, well, everybody stole my thunder already, but curriculum connections in a U.S. history or government class, you can imagine using this quote in any of these units. If you teach a U.S. history class, just as an example. And then, we don't have much time left, but we just wanted to give you a few other quotes to think about. By the way, we are going to be sharing lots of cool stuff with you. After this is over, you're going to be accessing things. But we wanted to show a couple quotes to get the wheels turning a little bit on how to use this method with the curriculum that you teach. Artist quotes in art history, Jillian. That's a great idea. And the ones that we're going to share with you, after this, we have Confucius. We go Eastern philosophy. We go Western philosophy. We go here, American presidents, civil rights activists, worldwide quotes. That's the beautiful thing about using quotes. They're all over the world on all kinds of different subjects, so you can match the right quote to your objective. Interesting. Christy's coming up with a math application of this.
A math application.
Yeah. Okay, so we have
right. Christy, sorry, go ahead, Dan.
Go ahead.
Christy, stats are so abused into different perspectives. And I really like that idea. Like, get the claim, counterclaim, get them used to that, and then realize anytime you see a stat, there's a counterclaim to the stat. So if I'm thinking the way you are on that, I think that would be really good in math.
Okay. Kimberly, that's really good. Yeah, I remember Lance. I love that quote from Mark Twain.
And
okay.
Viliana, you asked a question about language learning. Language learners, the benefit of this to them is that they don't get overwhelmed with the quote. You can ask them to read it 10 times, put it in their own language, put it in multiple languages. They can participate in the conversation socially, usually, sooner than they can write and do academic work. So the quote creates access for them, and that's going to help with the essential question as well. I hope that made sense.
And teachers of language have told us that the hardest thing working with students learning a new language is to give them permission, as Steve suggested, to get them thinking and talking about something that means something to them. So because the quote is short and because they're talking about their lives, they'll get to practice a new language in a way where they don't feel as intimidated. Okay, so we have just a little time left. We want to make sure we get to this slide, Steve. Do you want to explain that? You're off mute.
I'd like to bring, Kimberly, would you like to come in and share and say a couple things? You know what happens with time zones? It was the same thing with us.
Well, I'm glad I'm not alone. Hi, everyone. I'm not sure if people can see me here in Seattle, but I'm sorry to have missed the party because I think I'm your number one fan. And I don't know about the rest of the people here, but I can still remember watching my first inquiry lesson. I was actually participating in a simulation. I remember the first time someone introduced Socratic seminar to me. I remember my first experience with the question formulation technique. And the reason I'm mentioning these things is because they are transformational in my own practice with my students. And they were routines that I could see not getting old, and I could see being able to expand on and riff off of, and they did the work of inquiry. And so when Dan and Steve joined my classroom, and I teach undergraduates, I think you two came at a time when we were studying Booker T. Washington and Du Bois, and we were looking at, in the United States, the history of education or teaching as a profession. And we had a Booker T. Washington quote. And I watched these two people with my own students, which that is another great experience, to watch other adults in your classroom working with the students that you know so well, and to watch what changes in them. And, I remember standing back and thinking to myself, my gosh, I have never heard this one student speak so much. And it was because of the process that was initiated. And I then thought, I said, you guys, this is exactly what I advocate for with the 5 inquiry strategies, the inquiry 5. And so I don't know, is this the right time to maybe share the inquiry 5? So I don't know, for those of you who may not be familiar, over the last 20 years that I've been researching inquiry-based instruction and peeking into classrooms around the world and observing what teachers do to get students to ask more questions, there are 5 things that keep bubbling to the surface. And these 5 things is what I see happening with the Teach Different method. Getting personal, there's all sorts of connections coming up because students have to go beyond just the textbook. They have to think about their own personal experiences. Staying curious, this is for the teacher to really think about. How are you as a teacher coming forward, not as a didact, but as someone who's also authentically curious about the world? And the other thing I note, do you notice when Dan and Steve were even speaking to us, the way they pause a lot? And the pausing is not just great wait time, but what the pausing communicates to me is, I need a moment to really think about what you just said, because that's important. It doesn't happen very often that students feel truly heard, seen, and respected by their teachers in the classroom. Even if we feel that we love them and we respect them, the pace and all the things going on they get in the way. So that stay curious disposition comes through in this method. Asking more and talking less. When you hand over the discussion primarily to the students, and imagine if the students were the true facilitators eventually of the conversation, you're seeing, instead of that I think of it as the teacher lobbing the tennis ball over the net and waiting for one student to return it back to the teacher, you see people playing soccer. They're passing the ball to one another. Encouraging evidence, we talk about debunking and counterclaims and things like that. It necessitates a real thoughtful view on where we get information and the quality of that information. And finally, the extending thinking time. To me, the pre-work done with the SEL check, think about this first for a moment, maybe not too long. We don't want a dissertation. We don't want you to know everything when you come to the conversation, but prepare yourself emotionally for it. How powerful and respectful is that? So I'm so delighted that Dan and Steve are doing this work. I think the approach they're taking and having all of us teachers engage in it ourselves, or I had got the experience of them coming to my classroom, or, they also invite teachers to do it with one another regularly. That's the good stuff right there. So I just want to thank them for developing this method, especially while Dan's still teaching and practicing the method. And, the other thing is all 5 of these strategies have very solid research base around the importance of students speaking more, of asking higher level questions, of backing up claims. And so, boy, to me, this method is a real game changer. So again, I apologize for being late, but I'm so delighted that we were able to share this method with you. And yeah, is it Q&A time, or where are we?
Q&A, right?
Definitely.
Q&A, and I'm already getting, I'm very happy to be getting the emails that people are sending. This is the email to send to me, and I will be getting you the stuff together, okay? And Dan, I don't know if you want to talk about what the stuff is, or we should, maybe give a little bit on it, but it's going to be something that hopefully will be useful for you. And I'll let Dan share that.
It'll be a lot of examples. We're gonna share resources that we've created where we've devised quotes, and we've walked you through the claim and counterclaim and essential questions. So you'll almost be able to shop for the one that you need to use in your particular situation. So it'll all be explained in the email, and you'll have access to what we do. The last 2 years, Steve and I, the pandemic has given a lot of us a lot of time to do things. We chose to develop a lot of conversations. And so we're in the process now of sharing those with the world, literally, in this webinar. So we hope you enjoy that. And please, we'd love to stay in touch, as we move forward. We want to do work with lots of different organizations. We're working with the International Baccalaureate right now as well, sharing our method through their PD digital library. And then, with Chapters International, we're here and we love it. So stay in touch.
Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Kimberly and Dan and Steve. Wonderful, wonderful webinar. A lot to learn. Lovely to know about all the conversations and the quotes. I find these quotes fabulous, and the whole marriage between Teach Different and Inquiry 5, that's great. So I hope, so thank you all for being here, and I hope to see you all for another Chapters webinar workshop soon. Please stay safe and take care of yourself. And thank you, Dan, Steve, and Kimberly again.